Hello again, everybody. We're exploring world history, lesson number 17. We're going to be talking about the faith of Abraham. Okay. So first, what is faith? Can you define faith? Hopefully you can. If not, maybe take a minute, look around, talk to each other, see if you can come up with a definition of faith. Faith, according to Hebrews 11, verse 1, is the assurance of things hoped for, the convictions of things not seen. Okay, and Abraham was known and is known for his faith. So first, some ways that he's known and he's talked about is the Apostle Paul cites Abraham's faith as an example of what faith in God really means. In the book of Hebrews, there's what's called the roll call of the faithful there, and there's a few different people named, and Abraham is one of those people named in there. He is an extremely important example for the New Testament church, and he made a difference in the world, his world specifically. And he serves even today as a model for Christians in their faith, okay? So what are some examples of Abraham's faith? First, he demonstrated faith when he followed God's call and left his homeland and his extended family to move to Canaan, right? God said, you need to move. And he said, I don't even know what we're going or where we're going, but he did it anyway. He also believed in the promise of a son and a great nation. And we'll talk more about this later, but, he struggled with this some, and that's okay. Because even though he questioned God and was struggling with this, he ultimately believed God and had faith that God could do it. He also showed faith in God by accepting the circumcision as a sign of the covenant as God commanded him. This was not something I'm sure he wanted to do, probably not something he thought was a great idea, but because God asked him to do it, he went ahead and did it. Also, as we just recently talked about in the city of Sodom and Gomorrah, he showed faith when he pleaded with God on the behalf of Sodom and Gomorrah. He pleaded with God for Lot and his family's sake. He pleaded for God with the city, but he also knew God was faithful and just, and he trusted in him to do what he needed to do. I think the ultimate showing of faith from Abraham is when he was asked to sacrifice Isaac, his son. The greatest test of Abraham's faith. Abraham, waited and waited for this son, finally got the son. Some years later, God says, I need you to take him to the mountain and sacrifice him. And I'm sure there was all kinds of thoughts in Abraham's head and all kinds of things that he was confused about. But he had to trust God and had to keep his faith in God. And he took all of the necessary steps to sacrifice his son. To the fact where he had him bound and laid on the altar. Abraham drew absolutely no line in his faith in God. But as we've talked about a little bit a few minutes ago, Abraham also had some failings in his faith. He was not a perfect person. He struggled with his faith, and his faith was certainly not perfect. Just quickly, I'm going to give you two examples. As he approached the Pharaoh, and then Ahimelech, and misled them about Sarah being his wife. He was afraid, basically, at this point that they would kill him, so they could take her as his wife, their wives, because she was a beautiful woman. And so he said, "Oh, it's my sister," and told her to lie about it, instead of trusting that God would protect him. Eventually, that was found out, and he had to deal with the consequences of that. But he also tried to produce his heir through Hagar instead of Sarah. Remember, we talked about he struggled with being told he would have a son. He was an old man. His wife was an old man. And he thought, there's no way this is going to work. So at one point, he takes his wife's handmaid and gets her pregnant and has Ishmael through her. And that's what he was thinking. And God said, no, I will make you, give you a son through your wife Sarah. And so you just need to have faith and trust me. And so it just shows that he wasn't perfect in his faith. He struggled with his faith. However, he still had a strong faith in God. And these are some of the lessons that we can learn from his failings. The Bible tells the truth, including the weaknesses and failings of its heroes, right? He's put on this basically wall of heroes in Hebrews with the faithful, Yet it also shows that he sinned and had problems and struggled with his faith. So it shows us that we can do both. God can work through someone who has imperfect faith, right? A lot of you may be thinking, oh, how can God use me? I've struggled with this before. Your faith isn't strong enough, and that's okay. Because you have to, the faith of the person whose your faith is in is strong enough to take care of it for you. So God can use someone and work through someone who has imperfect faith. Ultimately, in conclusion, we want to know and understand that Abraham gives us a lot of examples of how to be a good, faithful person, even though he was not perfect. So our call is to trust God, not to have flawless faith, but to be available to God so he can accomplish his will through us. Thanks.